And yet, as I referenced a minute ago, the biggest story in sports, or certainly the most absurd, I would say, is this proposal from the ACC that they want to include all 346 teams in college basketball in the NCAA tournament. As I tweeted, along with the people who came up with New Coke, ESPN The Phone, and whoever was the knucklehead that thought we should make Home Alone 3. Those are the three worst ideas in the history of human civilization. A 346 team NCAA tournament is right up there. And so let's get into this. Let's talk about it. And really where it stems from, for people who didn't see the report, essentially the ACC, really all of college basketball is regularly getting together and trying to figure out how this season is going to look. And I do think it's important. I do think that we should give a little bit of credit to college basketball outside of this idiotic ACC idea, because college basketball has really learned from college football about how to handle the season ahead. And what I mean by that is that college football, look, we all followed it starting in April, May, straight through right now as we get set for Miami UAB tonight. And it was a cluster, right? Like, we can all agree, whether you agree with the Big Ten decision, the Pac-12, you disagree, you think we should have full stadiums, wherever you stand, I think we can all agree that this thing was a major cluster. And it was a major cluster for really one simple reason, and that simple reason was that the powers that be in college football were just like, we'll figure it out, right? Like April, May, June, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll be fine by August. Don't even need to think about it. And then we get to August, and everybody's in scramble mode. Everyone's changing their schedules. Everyone's canceling their seasons. Everyone's, meeting with presidents. There's all these things going on. And college football's biggest mistake was that they didn't really have an actionable plan. They told students that they could come back to campus in the middle of June, and then they never really had any checks and balances at that point. You get to August, cases are still pretty high, and all of a sudden you start scrambling. Some conferences cancel their season. Some conferences can't afford to test, whatever. The point being is that college football did not have a plan, and at the very least we need to give college basketball credit because, as I said a minute ago, I do believe that they are doing everything to have a plan in place. And I've talked about it on this show, but college basketball, the powers that be behind the scenes are meeting and are basically just throwing stuff up against a wall right now and trying to figure out what could potentially work, right? We've seen all the reports. Matt Norlander from CBS Sports, a buddy of mine, he put out a very extensive proposal about how Mohegan Sun, which is not far from where I grew up in Connecticut, it's a major casino, how they could actually host a potential bubble. John Rothstein's put out some stuff. I think I said on this podcast, I have heard that Omaha, where Creighton University is, could potentially host a bubble. I know some people in D.C. that are talking about hosting a bubble. I saw a report from Kentucky Sports Radio that Atlanta may be the host of a bubble with the Hoops Hall Classic, an event that has, 6, 8, 10 teams. Bring them all together. They weren't all planning to play each other, but you get them all in one place, you test them, and you let them play kind of a round robin. And so I just give college basketball so much credit because it's very clear that everyone is working behind the scenes to make sure that we get games in, to make sure that we're not in the same position as college football where you're planning, you're not really planning, you're kind of paying attention, you're not paying attention, boom, it's time to start the season, and you're not ready to go. So I do give college basketball credit for this. But in their infinite wisdom on, I guess it was, Wednesday morning, the ACC coaches get together and they somehow come up with this absurd proposal that they want all 346 teams in college basketball to make the NCAA tournament. The funny thing was, you saw the tweets from John Rothstein, you saw the tweets from Jeff Goodman. They were essentially saying that the vote was unanimous. I don't know if I really believe that the vote was unanimous. As much as I believe the power players in that room, like Coach K, like Roy Williams, like Jim Boeheim, may have been the ones behind it, and everybody else fell in line. I just cannot believe that all 14 head coaches in that room or on that Zoom call were in agreement that this was the best plan of action, okay? And so let's get into the decision itself. And really, as best I can tell, the reason for this idea, there are two real reasons, right? There's the fake reason that the ACC is trying to spit out, which is that, we missed the NCAA tournament last year, and because nobody could have it, we need to be as inclusive as possible this year. Let's let everyone in the tournament. And that sounds good, and that's nice, and it makes for a nice little graphic on social media, but we know that's not really what's happening. And so as best I can tell, there are two real reasons that the ACC wants this plan in place, which is for all 346 teams to make the NCAA tournament, which again, along with ESPN The Phone and Home Alone 3, is the most idiotic idea I've ever heard. As best I can tell, the first reason is, and I saw Gary Parrish report this, is that I don't get the sense that ACC coaches want out-of-conference games, okay? And I give credit to other leagues. Other leagues are already planning things. The Big Ten reportedly is very active in wanting out-of-conference games. By the way, that's another conversation. Big Ten basketball playing in November, but football not. We'll save that conversation for another day. It's just nice not to be talking Big Ten football for the first time in literally like 5 weeks, okay? But as best I can tell, the first reason is they don't want out-of-conference games. And the reason they don't want out-of-conference games is because of the testing procedures. And this goes to ultimately why so many Power 5 football conferences went to no out-of-conference games, right? The SEC is playing a 10-game league-only schedule, and it is because they essentially do not trust other conferences to test as vigorously, to be as safe, to travel the way the SEC travels. And so the way the SEC did it was they were like, dude, listen, we're going to keep it in-house. Everybody's going to have the same testing procedures. We're going to test on the same day. We're going to test at the same time. We're going to pull anybody who's not safe to play. And so the ACC, I think, is fearful that is going to happen in basketball. And I think in their defense, there's been a couple of good examples of what can happen when a power conference with the money and resources to test regularly goes up against a school that can't do that. We saw it this week in football where Tulsa and Oklahoma State was canceled because Tulsa had a bunch of positives. Tulsa can't test as regularly as Oklahoma State. They can't test as vigorously as Oklahoma State. Louisiana Tech had to cancel their game against Baylor for the same reason. Now, in defense of Louisiana Tech, and I'm not making light of this is actually what happened, there was the hurricane that rolled through Louisiana about 2 weeks ago, and unfortunately, a lot of the players got displaced. My understanding is that a lot of them had to switch up their routines. They're not practicing. They're staying with people they wouldn't normally stay with. But the point remains is that there are all these positive tests, and we're having to cancel football games. And so I think the ACC is looking at that and saying, like, dude, we just don't really want to play out-of-conference games. We'll play like 22 or whatever, 24 in-conference games. We'll play a home-and-home with everybody, whatever. We just don't want to play out-of-conference games. I think it's dumb. I think it can be done safely. I think when you have these bubbles, you bring everybody in and test them together. So that doesn't really make sense to me. But I do believe that's one of the reasons. I'd also say I think the ACC is pretty unique in this category in terms of the concerns about the safety of the virus. Something to consider and remember with the ACC, they have off the top of my head like 5 coaches that are right around 70 years old, right? Coach K is 70 plus. Jim Boeheim at Syracuse is 70 plus. Roy Williams is in his like late 60s. I don't think he's hit 70 yet. Leonard Hamilton at Florida State is 70 plus, and Jim Larinaga at Miami is right around his late 60s as well. And so I do think that some of the older coaches who are more successful, who have a bigger voice in the room, probably are pushing more aggressively for no out-of-conference games for the reason that I just said, because they're worried about testing. I think the other reason that the ACC is really pushing for this is something that in theory makes sense, but when you actually break it down, it doesn't, and that's about cold hard cash, right? What's the old saying? Just follow the money. You got a problem, confused about something, just follow the money, you get to the solution. And I think that's the situation for the ACC. One, I think they can probably save money by not playing any out-of-conference games, by not traveling to any of these bubbles. Again, I disagree with the concept, but I think that's their thought. But I think the other thought from the ACC that they're trying to push publicly, which makes absolutely no sense, but they're going to keep trying, is that, well, we lost all this money from the NCAA tournament last year, right? You don't play any NCAA tournament, you get no games, you get no TV revenue. Well, guess what? Instead of playing no tournament last year, let's quadruple the size of it this year. It's not even quadruple. It's way bigger than that. But let's play a bigger, better, crazier tournament this year to make up for last year not having a tournament. And all I would say is that's pretty much the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard because, like so many things in life, quantity does not equal quality. And I do think like that is the first reason where, like, on the very surface level, this just doesn't make sense, right? So like first of all, quantity does not equal quality, right? Like having Cal State Northridge play Montana State, like you could call it the NCAA tournament, but nobody's tuning in to watch, right? Like we tune into the NCAA tournament for the bracket, for the 68 teams, the bracket reveal, all that stuff. Now we're just going to have 346 teams playing. We're going to call it the NCAA tournament, and we're going to slap a bracket on it and call it the NCAA tournament. It's not the same. Reminds me of the line from Tommy Boy. What is it? You can get a good look at a bull's. You could get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but I'd rather take the butcher's word for it. That's kind of like the NCAA tournament. You can play Cal State Northridge versus Montana State in March and call it the NCAA tournament, but I'd rather have the real NCAA tournament. All right, not going to lie, that analogy made no sense, but I thought of the line, so I went with it. Deal with it, people, okay? But I think that is the first reason why this doesn't make sense. So let's get into why I believe this is a terrible decision. I'm actually surprised there are some people that are publicly behind this decision. And listen, everyone's entitled to their opinion. I have no problem. I just don't really get it. So here are the reasons that, to me, just your boy AT, just saying, this is just me, this idea makes no sense. So first of all is that exact reason that I just said, right? The the NCAA tournament, to go from 68 to 346 teams, the TV people have to sign off on it, right? And I think the ACC's idea is that, hey, no NCAA tournament last year, so we'll make it way bigger, way crazier this year. Here's the problem. You know who's not going to be behind that? CBS and Turner, the ones who broadcast that tournament. I mean, if you just think about it in the simplest form, right? What we have to remember is, listen, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. We're hopefully beyond the middle, but you get the point. We're still in the process of getting out of a global pandemic. This pandemic has wreaked havoc on our economy. I feel bad for so many people whose lives have been altered over the course of the last 6 months, who may be altered going forward. We've all gone through it. We've all lost job opportunities. We've all know somebody who's lost job, whatever the case may be. But you know who else has suffered through all this? The TV networks, especially Turner, especially CBS, who were not able to broadcast the NCAA tournament, which of course means that they were not able to get the money and the revenue from broadcasting the NCAA tournament. So first of all, I just don't buy the idea that the TV networks, which are hemorrhaging money, just like virtually every company in America is, I don't buy that the TV networks are going to sign off on this. Again, you can't play, Cal State Northridge, again, for the millionth time. Cal State Northridge and Montana State, you can't just have them play, call it the NCAA tournament, and expect people to watch. It's not going to happen. I don't believe the TV networks will get behind it, okay? So that's the first reason. I think the second reason is that, I think that playing so that's the most obvious logical reason. Now let's get into some kind of personal reasons, some reasons that like we as college basketball fans just don't want it, or at least I don't want it. And if you disagree with me, you're more than welcome to disagree. But number two, I think this is an important part as well. You play a 364-team NCAA tournament, not only are the TV networks not happy about broadcasting it, but you know who else isn't happy about it? All the other TV networks, ESPN, Fox, Fox Sports 1, ESPN 2, ESPNU, ACC Network, SEC Network, Big Ten Network. And you know why? Because what you've just done, you've ruined the NCAA tournament, but you've also made the college basketball regular season completely meaningless. And you guys know me. Most of you have been listening for years. For people who are new to the show, I love college hoops. I spend a ton of the year talking college hoops on this show. I'm a guy that's going to watch games no matter what. I am a guy that is going to come on and react to Duke, Virginia, whether it's in February, whether it's in December, or whether it's the opener of the ACC tournament or the ACC tournament championship game. I am a rare and dying breed, okay? I understand that most people, when college basketball overlaps in most years with college football, with the NFL, with, in some cases, the beginning of Major League Baseball, and oh, by the way, the NBA in most years as well, I understand you guys don't have a ton of time to watch regular season college hoops, and that's under normal circumstances. Now imagine the circumstance where every game literally means nothing. Because if you let everybody in the NCAA tournament, then again, every game literally means nothing. All you're doing all year is playing for seeding. There is no meaning to any game. There is a reason that NBA regular season ratings are down. There is a reason for that situation. And that is because, frankly, the NBA regular season doesn't matter. The players don't play. The players understand I can take a night off here and there. It's going to be fine. The players understand I can take more than one night off, and it's not going to affect us. I just got to be ready for the playoffs. And it'd be the same with college basketball. I mean, imagine a scenario where, whoever, Duke starts 1-3, Kentucky starts 1-3, Carolina starts 0-4. I mean, think back to Carolina last year. Carolina had the worst year historically in the history of the program. And imagine if none of it mattered because they just got into the NCAA tournament. Imagine if North Carolina was just like, whatever. We went 13-18 or whatever. But whatever. We're just going to turn it on in the NCAA tournament. It makes no sense, and it's not fair to the consumer. It's not fair to the players. It's not fair to the TV networks. It's not fair to the coaches. It makes no sense, okay? So that's two. So first of all, TV networks will never go for it. It devalues the regular season, which again is something the TV networks are not going to be happy about. Then on top of that, here's my biggest issue. Is it devalues everything that we like about actual college basketball, right? Think about the kind of concept of the college basketball regular season, right? Play in November, play in December, play in January, and then February, when the NFL season begins to end, it really ramps up. And how does it ramp up? It ramps up with bracketology. It ramps up with bubble talk. It ramps up with conference tournaments. And now we're going to play none of them. Think about a world. First of all, poor Joe Lunardi, who's going to have to put together a 346-team bracket and come on ESPN and talk about it. I was thinking about this today. We'll get back to it in a minute. Poor Joe Lunardi, who's going to be in that bracket bunker with stacks of paper to his left and to his right. He's got to come on and explain why Pepperdine fell from a 28 seed to a 29 seed. Like, poor Joe Lunardi. Okay, Joe Lunardi's side tangent over. But let me get back to the main point. The things that we love about, so first of all, we're going to completely devalue the regular season. Then the things that we actually, the average person checks in for are going to be devalued as well. There will be no bubble talk when we have a 346-team tournament, okay? Beyond no bubble talk, that's what makes the end of the college basketball regular season interesting. Indiana's on the bubble. They're fighting for their playoff lives. What does it mean? They lose today. Does that hurt them? Does it help this team? Florida stinks, but they went on a 3-game winning streak. Does that help them? Does that hurt them? Let's get to the conference tournament. We got to win 2 games to get into the big dance. We got to win the whole thing to get to the big dance. Now none of it matters. So what the heck are we going to talk about in February? There's going to be nothing to talk about. Seeding? Who cares? Everybody gets in. Doesn't matter who's the number 1 seed. You got to win 72 games to get to the national championship. It's like the movie Basketball. You guys remember Basketball? When there was like 15 rounds of the playoffs, they went on for like 9 months straight. I'm sorry, kid. If you've seen the clip, it's hilarious. I tweeted it out today. But Basketball, 15 months regular, 15 round postseason, 8 months. Like, that's going to be college basketball. Why are we going to talk bracketology? It doesn't matter if Pepperdine's a 27 seed or a 28 seed. It's irrelevant. But the point is, everything that we love about college basketball is going to be negligible come February. I would add this. Listen, I'm one of those freaks, and I've argued this before. I actually like the week of conference tournaments more than the actual first week of the NCAA tournament. And it's not that I don't love the NCAA tournament. It's that the conference tournaments, you get all the kind of fire and passion and piss and vinegar of the first round of the NCAA tournament, but you get it over the course of a full week instead of 2 or 3 days. You get the best teams. You get a Duke playing 3-4 times in a week. You get North Carolina, Kentucky, UConn, Syracuse, whoever playing 4 or 5 times in a week. They're playing better competition. But again, that's just a great thing. But 2, isn't kind of having conference tournaments exactly what you're proposing? Because that's the part that doesn't make sense to me. Well, the idea is everybody, if we go to a 346-team tournament, then everybody gets a shot to play for the NCAA. Everyone gets a shot to play for the championship. Well, isn't that what conference tournaments are about? Now, you can argue a conference tournament isn't the best way to determine an automatic qualifier. I can't argue with that. But I would also say that while that's not the best way to determine an automatic conference winner, it still serves the purpose of a 346-team NCAA tournament, which is everybody gets a shot to compete for a championship. You win the Big South. You win the SoCon. You win the Big West, the WCC, the SEC, the ACC. You got a shot to play for the national championship. So are we just doing that anyway by just not having conference tournaments and having a 346-team field? It doesn't make sense. Finally, the last thing to me is it kind of just ruins the actual NCAA tournament too, right? Because, what do we love about the NCAA tournament? Unless it's your school playing, you love getting together with your buddies. You love going to Buffalo Wild Wings. You love basketball at noon Eastern, and you're drinking and you're eating wings and you're having a good time and you're checking your bracket. And if you live in a state where you can bet, you're betting on some of the games. I'm not saying you can't do that now, but it's a little different when you can take off a Thursday and Friday from work. And now you got to take off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in perpetuity because there's a million games because there's 346 teams in. So I'm not going to beat this to, it's a dead horse at this point, but I will just say it makes no sense. I don't like it. I'm not interested in it. I think most of you feel this way. But I would also add, the good news is it feels as though most people who cover college basketball don't like it. And on top of that, there's a lot of coaches already pushing back. I saw Jeff Goodman tweet about ADs calling it a total S show. I'm trying to be appropriate here. It's a family show. Calling it an S show. I hear other coaches that I've talked to say it's ridiculous. And these are coaches, by the way, many of them which could benefit from this type of situation. It doesn't feel as though there's any fervor for this 346-team tournament. And I just hope that we don't get it, one. And two, that we just get a normal college basketball season with bubbles and whatever a normal season will look like, because to me, this doesn't make sense.